In 1536, the 1000-day queen, Anne Boleyn, was executed. She had been sentenced to death for adultery, incest and treason, and faced her fate at the hands of a French swordsman who took her head off in one clean swing. Anne had been a woman who divided opinion of the country, and people did not like her for the fact she and Henry then treated Catherine of Aragon poorly. Catherine of Aragon was Henry VIII's first wife, and she was shunned by Henry as his wandering eye caught the younger Anne Boleyn at court, and she captivated the king. The treatment of Catherine was shocking, as she was forced out of the royal apartments and Anne was moved in. An annulment came shortly after for the king's first marriage, after he split from Rome and declared himself the supreme head of the Church of England. But Anne was hated by members of the English population, and at one point she was nearly seized by an angry mob of women, only just escaping. But Anne's downfall and execution was much more bloody and shocking than Catherine of Aragon, and, following her death, rumours did emerge about the intriguing second wife of Henry VIII, including one that disturbingly alleges that her heart was buried away from her body after it was cut out of her corpse at her execution. On the 19th of May 1536, Anne was taken from her quarters at the Tower of London and escorted to the newly erected scaffold. She had been accused of adultery, incest and treason, and along with 5 other men, including her own brother, she was found guilty and sentenced to death. Henry VIII had summoned a French swordsman and executioner to take the head off of his wife, and she was taken out of her rooms and brought to the scaffold which had been built on the north side of the White Tower. She wore a red petticoat and was joined by 2 female attendants. She made her final walk from the Queen's house to the scaffold, and was known to have been upbeat for someone who was going to be killed minutes later. She made her way up the stairs and spoke to the crowd at length, saying, "Good Christian people, I am come hither to die. For according to the law and by the law I am judged to die, and therefore I will speak nothing against it. I am come hither to accuse no man, nor to speak anything of that whereof I am accused and condemned to die. But I pray God save the king, and send him long to reign over you, for a gentler nor a more merciful prince was there never. And to me he was ever a good, a gentle, and a sovereign lord. And if any person will meddle with my cause, I require them to judge the best. And thus I take my leave of the world and of you all, and I heartily desire you all to pray for me. O Lord, have mercy on me. To God I commend my soul." She then lifted off her headdress, tucked her hair under a coif, and said goodbye to her ladies, asking them to pray for her. She then said a final prayer, and in one swift stroke the swordsman took off the head of the Queen of England, and Anne Boleyn's head fell into the straw, which had been placed above the material on the scaffold to absorb the blood. Many claimed she would be a queen in heaven, and her supporters greatly mourned her. The sight of a Queen of England lying dead upon the orders of her king was incredibly shocking, but after her execution a number of rumours emerged about the Queen. There are some which are rather slanderous, for example the rumour that states that she had a 6th finger on her right hand, but there was one which is rather disturbing that concerns the moving of her remains and parts of her internal organs after her head was taken clean off. After Anne's execution, she was then buried inside of the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula. Many people thought that, as Anne's family originated from Norfolk and Suffolk, that she would be returned to her homelands to be buried, and others speak of a tale where Anne's heart and other body parts had been stolen during her burial. One story that is linked to Anne Boleyn is about her heart and where it may have been buried after her death. It was a Tudor tradition at the times to remove parts of a significant person's body and to bury them in different places. For example, Henry VIII had the heart of Jane Seymour cut from her body and then buried inside the Chapel Royal at Hampton Court Palace, below the high altar in a box. Jane's body was then interred in St. George's Chapel in Windsor, with her heart remaining at Hampton Court. But Anne Boleyn's heart, it was alleged, was cut from her body, and a rumour emerged that it was buried inside St Mary's Church in Warton in Suffolk. It was alleged that Anne had requested that her heart should be buried inside of the church after her death. The story of the church does date back to the Tudor period, as Anne's uncle Sir Philip Calthorpe, who had married Anne's aunt, owned the original Tudor mansion that stood nearby the church. It was said that as a young girl, Anne Boleyn loved spending time here, and spent much time playing and enjoying life. She allegedly claimed that she was the happiest when she was at this Tudor mansion, and that her happiest days were spent at the Hall. This is why it's believed by some that she wanted her heart to remain here. So some believe that following her execution, Anne's heart was cut out from her body and was then taken and brought to St Mary's Church in Suffolk, where it travelled a significant distance out of the capital, and where it was then interred inside of the church. However, disturbingly, there may be an element of truth or possibility in the rumour about Anne Boleyn's heart. Around 1837, the church was having renovations, and during this a heart-shaped leaden casket containing dust was found inside of a chancel wall, and this was then interred below the organ, where a small plaque marks the spot. Could this have been the rotted remains of Anne Boleyn's heart? Some historians have doubted the rumour and story, saying that it was unlikely, but what is interesting is that Jane Seymour's heart was also buried away from her body. Interestingly, there was no inscription on the casket, and some do believe that it contained Anne's heart. The story and rumour of Anne Boleyn's heart being interred away from the rest of her corpse inside the Tower of London is a remarkable one. During the Victorian times, her remains were disinterred inside of the Tower's chapel, and were confirmed to have been that of the infamous Queen. It was noted that she was beheaded by a sword, and that her head was not attached to the body. But the stories of Anne Boleyn's remains still in this present day today. For many people around the world, she is an incredible, captivating woman who changed England forever, and she's regarded as the most important consort that England has ever had. Thank you for watching, and to support, please subscribe to Her Remarkable History. Thank you.